Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me on once again, Brittany.
Of course. As we know, last month, Donald Trump was convicted of all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. You're now reporting that this could impact his ability to sell booze. How so?
So he has restaurants, bars, golf clubs in at least 8 different states, which to varying degrees have some sort of law saying that you have to have good character to have a liquor license in them.
So let's go state by state, if you will. Let's start in the state I'm in, the Garden State, New Jersey. What are the rules here?
New Jersey is the one that looks to be the most serious chances of from having some repercussions here. So the phrase that comes up in New Jersey, and it comes up a few other places as well, is that they can't. The holder of a liquor license could not have been convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude. As for what moral turpitude means, that varies based on the state. Some places define it, some nobody knows. But in New Jersey, there's a state handbook that explains those sorts of crimes typically involve dishonesty, fraud, or depravity, which, business fraud seems like it probably involves fraud, and are severe enough to be typically punishable by up to a year in prison, which is certainly a possibility for former President Trump. So I reached out to New Jersey Office of Attorney General, and they said that they are currently looking into the matter.
So is there any workaround for Donald Trump to continue selling liquor here?
There are all sorts of workarounds that he has. Now, he has 3 clubs in New Jersey that serve alcohol. The state could just decide they don't want to deal with it, which is an issue that we saw here in Washington, D.C. with the Trump Hotel. There were some groups that went to go after his liquor license pre-conviction, but also for good character clauses, citing in part Stormy Daniels. And the suit ended up, the first time the DC ABC said, it's in the middle of the licensing period, not the right time, we can't do it. So the group, when the hotel came up for renewal, the group flagged it again, and they're like, too many of the people who signed this letter are from outside of DC or don't live here, don't work here, so we're going to throw it out that way. So they decided not to rule on it. So there are some workarounds there, if the local group doesn't want it. State by state, there are plenty of other options. Some of the states have laws that say if you're, you could say, like Florida, for example, you can bring in an affidavit saying that you know the difference between right and wrong, or some character witnesses. And, seems like Trump might be able to pull up some people in Florida who could attest to his character there.
So let's move to Florida, the Sunshine State. Trump has 5 properties that hold liquor licenses here. Are those in jeopardy?
It really depends on what Florida wants to do. Now, Florida, I reached out to several times. They did not get back to me. Maybe they did get back at me and I just haven't noticed it yet. So it really depends if the state wants to do anything with it. And it's I can't imagine much is going to happen there of any of the states.
So now let's move on up north. What about states like New York, Virginia, Illinois, and North Carolina?
So with a lot of these states, so the issue, Donald Trump does not directly own the business. It doesn't say Donald Trump on there. The liquor licenses that I've been able to obtain and find out who's named on them, he is not specifically named on them. A lot of times it was Donald Trump Jr., and that was changed shortly before Trump became president. But the issue is the way he's still connected to these liquor licenses is that they list the company that owns these clubs. And Donald Trump owns 100% of all of these businesses that we're talking about today, but it's not directly. There's usually like a company, a holding company, and then that company is held by 2 other companies, which might be held by 4 other companies, which might be one of the earlier companies. And it's all wrapped up in a trust, which is a revocable trust of which Donald Trump is the sole beneficiary, but he is not one of the trustees on there. So there are all sorts of ways that if one of the state ABCs wants to say, he's not on the liquor license, they could probably say that, even though, he is the owner of these. And some of the states have laws that if you own over 10%, you are considered to be on the liquor license. But, we'll see if they want to enforce that.
You're reporting, as a surprise to no one, that there is in fact a little bit more wiggle room when you move to Las Vegas. What does that look like? Walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, if Las Vegas had this rule, it would be dry. It's just they have to. It's up to the counties there, and they have to obtain evidence that the liquor license holder is of good moral character. It doesn't really say, or at least I couldn't find any definition of what of good moral character means. Spokespeople for Clark County Liquor Board, which is the jurisdiction that would oversee Trump's hotel there in Vegas, also did not get back at me. To me.
Zach, fun fact about me, my very first job, I was a caddy in middle school and high school. I also worked at country clubs as a waitress and busser. I know that alcohol, I can't remember too many rounds of golf I caddied where alcohol was not present. So what would this do to his business if it was actually enforced?
It would be pretty harmful. I mean, if you're not able to sell booze, that is a significant part of the revenue streams from these places. I mean, people are tied up in memberships, so I'm not sure if they'd be able to get out of it saying, hey, we signed up for membership under, the expectation we'd be able to get plastered while playing around a golf, and now that we can't do that, who knows? Who knows what that deal would be? But it would definitely make things more difficult for former President Trump.
So can you talk about who specifically would be in charge of enforcing these rules? And is there any history in the past that they have done that?
Yeah, so it's kind of a pain, at least from a journalist perspective, having to go through all these different states and figure out who is in charge. In some places it's counties. In Illinois, it looks like it's actually the city has a lot to do with it. Some places it's a ABC board or a state regulator, state license regulator. New Jersey, it's the ABC, which is under the Attorney General's office. So it really varies state by state. New Jersey previously did try to go after Trump's liquor license at his Colts Neck Club. There was an accident, I think it was back in about 2017, where a customer left the club and in a single car accident, I believe it was, he killed the passenger who was his father in the car. And the ABC went after the liquor license for that. Trump's Colts Neck did not contest the charges and agreed to pay a $400,000 fine, which is paying installments of $100,000, the last of which is due in October. So, they did have a problem with their liquor license before for a completely different reason there. And the issue is that this driver was found to have a blood alcohol content over the legal limit. And New Jersey was saying that the club should have stopped serving this person, and they also were serving in areas where they did not have a license to do so.
So is there any likelihood, from what you've seen, that these states would revoke the liquor license?
The fact that you're asking me likelihood questions is just, I'm shocked you're still doing it. You've asked me that repeatedly, and I'm wrong every time. I didn't think he'd be convicted in the first place, so we wouldn't even be having this conversation. At this point, I've learned my lesson, and I'm just I don't know. I think it really depends. Does the local official want to go after it or not? They know what it entails. They know if they go after it, there'll be a lot of blowback. They know if they don't go after it, there'll be a lot of blowback. The easiest thing is probably just not to make too much noise and wait for everything to shift and people to forget about it. So we'll see. It is a significant amount, 8 different jurisdictions. So all you need is 1 out of 8 to keep this story going. But we'll see.
Aside from New Jersey getting back to you and saying we're looking into it, have any of the other jurisdictions gotten back to you, or the Trump Organization, or a spokesperson for Trump himself?
Spokespeople for Trump and the Trump Organization did not. California did, and they said because of that ownership arrangement that I described earlier, where Donald Trump Jr. is on the license, and he, rather than Donald Trump, is a trustee on the trust that owns it, that for them, they don't consider Trump being part of the license. So Trump's got a golf course in Los Angeles County, and that one is clear. Some of the others got back to me as well, saying, hey, we don't see Trump on any licenses. I then explained the business structure. You can't expect all these different states to know the way his businesses are all set up like that. And I got back, and some of them said, oh, we're going to look into that and see if that matters at all. Others just ignored it altogether and didn't respond to me when I presented that new info.
Zach Everson, per usual, thanks for your reporting.
Thanks for having me.